Hey everyone, Hex here, and today we're playing some casual historic Brawl in Arena with a new legendary creature and a discard theme with a value train that just keeps on rolling. Before we get going, I really appreciate your support for the channel, and if you haven't yet, go ahead and click the subscribe button below to not miss out on further content. But let's get into today's deck. We're playing with Reezug the Bonecobbler, a 1/3 Spirit Artificer that says tap target creature in your graveyard perpetually becomes an artifact. You may cast that card this turn. Essentially, it just removes creature type from your creature and replaces it with artifacts, which are a lot more difficult for our opponents to remove later in the game. Discard wise, we've got a full package of spells and creatures that we can play, let them die, and then replay again from our graveyard. Those creatures are Burglar Rat, Corrupt Court Official, Elderfang Disciple, and Virus Beetle here. Other than that, we have Gutmorn, 1/3 that says when it ETBs, each player discards a non-land card. Whenever a player discards a card during your turn, they choose another player. That player conjures a duplicate of that card into their hand. It perpetually gains you may spend mana as though it were mana of any colour to cast this spell. Sweet card as we get to play their card normally. This Connoisseur, target opponent discards a non-land card with greatest mana value and on cards in their hand. Create a blood. We've got the Raven Man, which creates a 1/1 if an opponent discards a card on their turn. Tinybones, you get to draw and lose a life if an opponent discards a card this turn. Braids here, second chapter specifically, we get to bring back anything that we sack with our first chapter. So this is a great card if you get to bring back one of your cheap creatures there. And apart from that, just the standard other cards like Tergrid, Liliana, Davriel, and obviously Waste Not, where we get some value when the opponent discards a card. So we do have other creatures in the deck to win us a game that don't rely on discard. They have sweet ETB or triggers. We've got the Archfiend's Vessel. When this is brought back with Reezug, it becomes a 5/5 with a demon with flying, which is nice. The Freebooter here gets to exile a non-creature non-land card from their hand. Now, if this comes back as an artifact, they're going to have problems getting that card back. Patient Zero, just trying this card, haven't really used it much. Damage isn't removed from creatures your opponents control during cleanup. Priest, sweet card to hopefully get the opponent to have to sacrifice creatures. Plus it can ramp you if necessary on your turn. Braids here, you get to sacrifice a artifact, creature, enchantment, land, or planeswalker. So this is a nice little value engine if you want to sack your artifacts, especially some of these cheap discard creatures. Opponents don't always have artifacts to sack themselves, and it does 2 damage, you draw a card. Dread Presence, a sweet 3/3 that whenever a swamp enters the battlefield under your control, you get to draw a card, lose a life, or it deals 2 damage to any target and you gain 2 life. So again, another great card just to sit as an artifact. The Purveyor here. Now, I've used this in discard decks before. It works pretty well. It gives the opponent blood tokens. However, when they discard those, there may be value if you've got like a Waste Not out or something. And at the end of the day, this is a 5/6 flying trampler. So this is one of our win conditions. Kalitas ensures that opponents' creatures exile when they die, non-token creatures. Rankle, I love this card. You get to obviously attack with it and then they discard a card, lose a life and draw a card. Or each player sacks a creature. So it's just a all-round good one. The Chupacabra, a nice card here to bring back as the opponent's creature is destroyed when it enters the battlefield. Sheldred, well, we all know that card. Yawgmoth here, a nice card that you can hopefully start putting -1 counters on opponents' creatures if you want to, as an artifact. Grey Merchant, this card I just put in here as just a nice little value card to bring back if we need to hopefully try and win us the game later on. The Gearhulk, when it enters the battlefield, destroy target creature, you gain some life, and a Massacre Worm. All creatures your opponents control get -2/-2 until end of turn. And whenever a creature an opponent control dies, that player loses 2 life. So all these cards are really good as creatures, but they're also really good as artifacts, which is exactly what we want. All right, we're playing black, so obviously we have access to some decent removal here. I'm not going to go through it all, but yeah, it's just the standard removal you can see for yourself. Apart from that, we've got some cards here that just bring the deck together that I normally play in most black decks. We've got Assemble from Parts, which is a nice little kind of reanimation spell here. And again, reanimating one of your creatures here that you want to reanimate anyway is nice. Dark Ritual, Village Rites to Sacrifice, Deadly Dispute to Sacrifice, Underhanded Designs, maybe a cute card, but whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, you get to pay 1, and if you do, each opponent loses a life, you gain a life. Again, I'm not really sure if this card does work specifically well all the time, but when it does work, yeah, you can start pinging your opponents. Xander's Wake, fantastic card. You get to draft from its spellbook when a creature you control dies. Signet for ramp, connections for ramp, Grim Tutor, and Phyrexian Arena, so you can draw a card. Now, we are playing 34 lands with 3 MDFCs. You may want to add a couple more lands, but this is what I went with. This deck seems a blast to play, and if you didn't want to go discard, I guess you could go a different theme. But I really love Angel of Suffering, and I really can't recommend this card highly enough in Historic Brawl. But enough of me, and let's see how I get on Arena today. Alright, up against Huatli, and we'll keep this. It's a very discard-themed hand here. So, play our Phyrexian Tower here. And opponent with Reese the Redeemed, so they're going to be hard on the tokens. We play a couple of board wipes in this deck, but a lot of just spot removal, so we're going to be relying on our discard effects here to make some inroads into winning this game. So opponent ramp in there with a Signet, and we draw a couple of lands, which is nice. After playing Waste Not, Tinybones is a good card to play here, and this is what we've been sandbagging Duress for, to play it with some value from Tinybones and Waste Not, but opponent with Patria's Humiliation, so that removes abilities of a creature, so it's a good one, and a good answer for Tinybones. Although it's only a card and a life, so I'm not too bad it didn't kill it. We get to draw a card off of Waste Not, an opponent with History of Benalia, so that's a good one in itself. Creates a 2-2. Going to create another 2-2 next turn, and then it will pump them for the 3rd chapter. Yeah, so our hand's not particularly great, but we do get to ramp and play the Phyrexian Arena, so fingers crossed, drawing 2 cards a turn, we'll be able to find some answer to this board state. Opponent with Captain's Call. Alright, so a large selection here of tokens, but we'll see how this goes. Our Arena's going to draw us 2. The Chupacabra is a nice card here. We get to deal with Reese here so that it doesn't create elves. Not ideal though, but it's what we've got. And yeah, we'll kill Reese here. And we get to play Braids, and we'll sacrifice our Tinybones. We're not getting too much value from it here, and we can always bring it back with Reezug later if we need to. But the opponent seems to be able to deal with our discard spells, and we don't have any more in our hand. So these knights become 4/3s with Vigilance. So we're going to be taking a bit of damage here. And Warm Welcome. So they get to put a creature into their hand, create a couple of 2/2s. They find an Arcane Ranger, so it's more tokens. And yeah, they just attack with the 2 4/3s. And we draw more land, and okay, Extinction Event. All right, that's a good one. It's going to exile odd or even. Our Chupacabra is even, so we're not going to attack with it. We may as well sack it with our Phyrexian Tower to pay for our Extinction Event here. Name even, take out the opponent's creatures, keep our Braids on the battlefield, and later on we can use Reezug to bring back the Chupacabra to deal with any creatures on the battlefield. So the Phyrexian Tower working really well there. And yeah, we might as well play our land here. Hold open Soul Transfer for next turn in case we need to remove anything. But like I said, we're going to be able to bring back the Chupacabra next turn. And nothing to sack for Braids there. Phyrexian Arena, a really good card here. It's really giving us extra cards. Feed the Swarm, decent removal. And yeah, like I said, Reezug here, able to find the Chupacabra, able to bring that back. Hit the Vampire, Take the opponent down for 3. And yeah, the removal in our hand means that we should be okay with this game. Just gotta hope to draw a couple more creatures to get the damage through quickly. Braids, we might as well sacrifice the Chupacabra here to get 2 more damage through. We can't bring the Chupacabra back with Reezug as it is perpetually an artifact, and Reezug says target creature. Our opponent scoops it up anyway for the win. Up against Sheoldred here. Dark Ritual in our hand, some discard. Yeah, this is a keeper. Sheoldred these days seems to be more of a combo deck, making us draw many cards with Sheoldred on the battlefield. So hopefully these discard spells are going to put pay to that. Opponent with Gutterbones here. I mean, we have various ways we can play this, but yeah, let's get our Dark Ritual going here. Use the Kozilek to look in their hands. And they have a Treacherous Blessing, Feed the Swarm, and a Peer into the Abyss. All right, so we're going to be able to remove the Blessing here. We have Pilfer to remove the Peer into the Abyss, and they're both win conditions here for our opponent. So hopefully they don't have any ways to retrieve those from the grave. They scoop it up anyway. Not surprised there. All right, up against Eve. With a keepable hand, Fatal Push and Stitchers here. Yeah, it's a good start from us. Opponent with a tap land. So Eve is going to create oozes, I think, and it has Storm, so they can create a lot if they cast a lot of spells on a single turn. And a Florahedron for our opponent. I'm glad we have the Fatal Push in our hands, but let's tempt our luck, see if the opponent wants to block the Supplier. Didn't think so. And let's get rid of their ramp. Alright, so we do have a lot of removal on our hand. 3 of our cards are removal. Opponent with a Visionary, draw a card. And Freebooter's nice. But this is where we can use our Nightmare while we have an opportunity. We can take out the Visionary, and next turn we get to look into their hand. So it would be nice to get like a Waste Knot or something. Opponent ramps with Cultivate. And plays another land. So they're already up to 5. We get to look in their hand. Lots of creatures, but we'll take the Nyx Lotus. So that's an Azusa up there, Cemetery Prowler, and some oozes. Playing the Freebooter here, knowing there's no targets, just for a bit of board presence, I guess. Plus, if it's killed, at least Reezug can bring it back later. And we play our Reezug and the opponent with a Cemetery Prowler. All right, so the Prowler's going to kind of nerf our commander here a little bit. So we've got to be a little bit careful. We can either remove it or not worry about it too much. It's only 3 damage. But we'll see how this goes. Exile the opponent's graveyard. And going for the Priest of Forgotten Gods here. Again, more board presence. Playing against mono green, so they're not going to have too many removals. And we get to chance our luck with this Supplier and over the top with the Freebooter here. So putting down to 20. Prowler is going to start exiling our creatures from our graveyard. So we'll have to find a different way to win that isn't using a Reezug here. I guess we could just destroy the Prowler, but I really want these 2 removals in my hand to deal with some of the other threats, like this Oracle of Mulder, which is going to allow the opponent to play off the top of their library. And there's the opponent's commander, Eve. Just a single copy here, so I'm not too concerned about it. It'll be a 2/2 and a 3/3. So right now, no trample for our opponents. We can block for days. They get to attack, exile another creature from our graveyard, or a card from our graveyard, which is fine. And we can play our Mastery. I'm going to take out the Oracle of Mulder. I don't want the opponent to be using that card as we go forward, as we find a Tergrid, which we can't play for its creature side. However, we can play Priest here to sacrifice a couple of creatures, mill some more cards, see what we put into our graveyard. And yeah, there's a Chupacabra there, there's a Sheoldred there. Tough decision. We need to go for the win. I don't think a Chupacabra is the best option here. And I think As we drew the Angel of Suffering here, I picked Sheoldred just because we can get some life gain, incremental damage over the next few turns, and if we can get this Angel onto the battlefield, I actually can't see us losing the game. Angel means that we mill cards, rather that we mill twice as many cards as the damage we would take if they were to attack, and we don't take any damage at all. So if they attack with 3/4, we would mill 6 cards instead of taking 3 damage, and that works brilliantly with Reezug here. So I'm pretty confident if we can just find this 5th land. Opponent with a Ochre Jelly here. Not a card you just want to remove, it's a card you want to exile, and they're getting in with 7 damage here. Again, I'm fine with this. We'll take 7 damage. Let's just fingers crossed we can find a land. We do get to play our Assemble from Parts here if we want to. Get to find one of... perpetually give our creature, pay 3, exile it, and bring a copy back to the graveyard, but it's a zombie. And anyway, we find a swamp. So we get to play Angel of Suffering, and opponent has no removal in their hand, as we can see. And yeah, we can just take a few hits with this. Let Sheoldred start getting its value here, and the Angel can attack as well. So what, two turns? They should be dead. We take 13 times 2, so we are going to mill 11 times 2, terrible math there, 22 cards we mill, and that's 22 new targets, potential targets for Reezug, and a monument for our opponent. And yeah, get to play our swamp here. I'm gonna soul transfer this jelly, I think. Has ward 2. I worry slightly about a card that doubles damage or something like that, where we're going to mill way too many cards. So that was the reasoning for taking out the jelly there. Like I said, we're going to win in 2 turns anyway, so as long as we keep the damage to a minimum. Opponent takes 5, takes 2 more with Sheoldred. Yeah, so that's going to be another 7 damage next turn. So opponent with Sylvan Ranger gets to put gets to make a creature +2/+2 into end of turn. But this has been a fantastic showing of Angel Suffering again. Angel Suffering with Reezug, great combination. Just Angel Suffering in a historic Brawl deck seems pretty decent anyway. And I'm glad we took the Sheoldred earlier, not the Chupacabra, because that would be sitting on the battlefield just as a sort of nothing card right now. We're getting so much value from this Sheoldred. Opponent attacks with 10 power. Yeah, they get to exile a card from my graveyard. We mill 20 though, and that doesn't put us anywhere near dead. So, I mean, we could block if we wanted to. Opponent draws a card with their Enclave, going to take another 2 damage. So they're literally dead from the Angel, and they have no flying creatures or reach. So, fingers crossed there's no kind of removal in their hand, and they scoop it up. Great win against Eve there.
All right, up against Kethis here, and we are on the draw with a pretty decent hand if you like discard. So we'll keep this. And opponent with a tap land. And we get to play our own tap land. So they have a discount off their legendary spells, and they get to cast one from their graveyard if they exile 2 more. So expect lots of cheap legendary creatures. So we'll throw down the Raven Man here. Before we play our Rat and Braids. An opponent just throws down their Kethis immediately. All right, so we've drawn Infernal Grasp. I think this might be an opportunity to scrap our plans slightly and take care of Kethis while we have the opportunity. We can get him for 2. I would love to have played the Rat there, or even Braids, but the little combo here with Burglar Rat, Braids, and then be able to play the Rat the next turn. Opponent with God, Eternal, or Ketra. So they make 4/4s every time they cast a creature spell. And yeah, I chose to event this immediately just to clear the line. It does have a trigger when it goes into exile though. I was unaware when I first did this,
but now I realise. So it just goes third from the top of their library. So they're going to get to play that card again soon, but Ajani Unyielding hits the battlefield. And yeah, they get to exile our creature. It's a good one by them. So not the best start by us here, but we are managing to get down cards and get some kind of value. So we get to play our rat here. Opponent has to discard. And then we get to play Braids on its first chapter. We can sacrifice our Burglar Rat, and the opponent must discard their second card for the turn. So they're down to 2 cards in their library, and the Aketra is on top of their deck, so we know that that's coming next turn as they get to play Aketra and Ajani +2 to put all non-land cards from the top 3 of their library into their hand. Braids returns the rat, and we get to replay the rat. So nice little combo here with the Braids and the rat. And yeah, opponent's going to be down to 2 cards again. I'm slightly concerned about this god that's in their hand, but we'll use our Murderous Rider here on Ajani, as we don't have any good ways of killing planeswalkers with our creatures attacking. And opponent draws for their turn and Sheoldred, the old one. So this one is going to make us sacrifice a creature. I think in lieu of that, I should have blocked with the rat here, as we're going to have to sacrifice our Sheoldred anyway. It also means in their upkeep, they get to return a target creature from their graveyard to the battlefield. So a must answer threat. Luckily, we drew the Soul Transfer, so that's good. And we draw Davriel as well. So I would have preferred a 6th mana so we could play this Gearhulk. And we can't give them too much value from their graveyard, so unfortunately we need to use our Soul Transfer this turn, which only leaves 2 mana open, so we'll play out our Reezug here. And yeah, we've got a Burglar Rat in our graveyard, and that's about it. So we can get them to discard any cards if they only have 1 card in their hand. Temple of Plenty here, they get to scry. And the god that they've had drawn, the 3/6. So we're hanging in there. We do need to get some gas on the battlefield ourselves. Opponent attacks with their Kethis. That's fine, we'll take 3. But again, we've got the Purveyor in our hand, and that's definitely one of our win conditions if we can get that going. Opponent plays Mikaeus. Alright, so that's a really good legendary creature for 1 that they played. It does leave them empty-handed, so we don't have too much value in bringing back our Burglar Rat. But we can play out this Purveyor right now. Opponent is empty-handed, so unless they top deck removal, we should be in business. Mikaeus gets to put counters on itself and then remove counters to pump the team. So it's a concern, but I'm not too worried at this particular moment. We can block the double striker with our Reezug if we need to. And opponent, yeah, they put a counter on their Mikaeus and pass the turn. All right, I don't know why they didn't attack there. That seems like wasted damage. I probably wouldn't have blocked. Maybe I would have blocked with a 1/3. I'm not sure what I would have done, but they definitely missed out on either killing our creature or damage here. We haven't got much going on here, so I'm going to play this Davriel. And maybe it will distract the opponent enough. We do have to win the game though. So in this particular instance, I'm attacking with the 5/6. We're not going to win by sitting back and blocking. And at the end of the day, the Purveyor, I'm not going to block with the Purveyor, so we might as well attack the opponent down for 12, at least put them on a clock. We can block the Aketra with our Reezug and take some damage as Davriel triggers and hits the opponent for 2. So the Grey Merchant is going to do 6 damage when it enters the battlefield. That is the amount of devotion we have. And the Purveyor is going to do 5 damage on itself. So we can actually afford to block this turn with the Reezug, as the opponent plays a Rutstain. Alright, so they are
making blood tokens, which is actually going to increase the power of our purveyor when it attacks. So unless they've got a way to get rid of these blood tokens, that's already 7 damage from itself. Davriel's going to do 2 damage himself as well, and the Great Merchant of Asphodel. So yeah, we pretty much got this game wrapped up as long as we don't die this turn. Kethis finally triggers, and they are get to play a Kolvari and create another blood token, create a 4/4, but none of these have haste, so we should be good here. Opponent needs to kill us. They put a counter on everything, so we think we're going to be okay here. See what they want to do. Okay, they take down Davriel, and they attack our face. I mean, this is a weird attack because even if we don't block, well, actually, we can just block the 5/5 here, and Davriel is guaranteed to do 2 damage next turn, and our Blood Vial Purveyor is doing 8 damage itself. So they can see this. This is not hidden information. Just double checking that there's nothing I'm missing here, that I'm not going to die to some ability that I'm not aware of. But no, we get to block the 5/5, lose our Reezug. Davriel survives. I know we've got Grey Merchant in our hand anyway. We're going to win. And we drew Rankle, so we could win with that as well. But the information that the opponent had, they should have attacked our face. And let's go for the Grey Merchant win rather than Rankle or Davriel. Nice one. Okay, up against OG here. Get to go first. So a blue-white deck, so expecting some counter spells and interaction here. I do like our hand. Against control, you want to have discard. So this is a very discardy hand. The Village Right's not doing quite so well here. However, we're probably going to be able to sacrifice our court official at some point and hopefully bring it back with our commander. So that's the plan here. But yeah, always lead with Waste Not if we can. Get some value next turn with either Pilfer or the court official. And opponent plays Fibblefit. All right, so no counter magic here by them. So we get to play our court official. Play this, leave the Village Rights open. It's probably the best idea. Yeah, so opponent gets to discard a card. Wonder if they've read Waste Not. And they discard a land, so we get 2 more mana. All right, so we just get to play Pilfer now. So this is a decent turn for us. And some interaction, Yorion, Teleportation Circle. We can deal with creatures, I've got no problem about that. Enchantments though, different story. So we'll get rid of Teleportation Circle here. And yeah, take it from here. So the benefit of having cheaper creatures is if they want to counter that, they're only countering small spells, and if they're countering cards that make the opponent discard, I'm fine with that as well because it does the same trick. But we do get to Village Rights our card here, draw a couple. They undersimplify anyway, so yeah, not a problem. As we find our Citystalker Connoisseur, a great one as the opponent has to discard their highest mana value card in their hand, which we already knew was a Yorion. And a 4th mana drop, and here comes OG. So they gain 2 life and scry 2. So I think we've done pretty well so far at reducing their hand, but we need to make sure that we can start going for the throat a little bit here and try and deal with their life total. So slight change of plan here, going from discard to the Reezug plan. Get to play our Tampering here. And that's going to mill in our upkeep, so it will allow Reezug to have more targets. That's why the card's in here. And yeah, opponent with Aether Channeler gets to do something, create a bird, return another non-land permanent. All right, so they're going to return one of our permanents to our hand. Thing with returning the Connoisseurs, we get to replay it for value. And they return our token. All right, so we get to mill here, mill 3, draw a Patient 0. And what's in there? There's a Purveyor, Court Official. But I kind of like the idea of double spelling here, so let's get down the Court Official. And we can discard another card from their hand. And their Essence Scatter doesn't work too well against artifacts. We play our Patient 0 here, and opponent scoops it up before we see what they do. Really good win there against blue-white. Alright, up against Joda, the Unifier. One of my least favourite commanders to play against, as mainly because I find that I play against it so much. But we do have a pretty decent hand if you like discard, so fingers crossed this works well. Our opponent turn 1's a Goose. And so that was a non-legendary card by them. And we'll just play our Raven Man here. Get some value next turn with any of our discard spells. Problem with discard decks is if the opponent has no cards left in their hand, then discard effects aren't particularly great. And I've tried to sort of make sure that within this deck there's more value as well from these cards. Davriel's great, I think, as it does two things. It distracts your opponent, plus also, obviously, they discard a card, and then later on, they can start taking some damage. But yeah, the distraction part of this, opponents tend to attack it, and it saves you a bunch of damage one turn. They discard a card. Didn't attack. The Raven Man here is not to attack, it's to defend Davriel, and we get a bird as they play Azusa. So that's a pretty decent start there from our opponent, a good card. But we get some discarding here. So under City Plunder, they discard a card, then they may discard an additional card, and if they don't, you conjure a duplicate of a random card from their library into your hand. So I never know if I actually want them to discard a second card or not. They don't, and we get the Explore. Not particularly exciting for me. But we do get to play our Virus Beetle. So had they discarded a card, they would have lost their whole hand there. Anyway, it doesn't matter because Davriel is going to make that happen. That was a Cleansing Nova there, I think. So a bunch of removal from our opponent. And that was an extra turn spell they had to get rid of. So we've done really well actually of getting rid of all their cards in their hand. They do have a Shadow Spear here, so they could start gaining back some life. They attach it to their Goose. Attack down Davriel. Whatever, Davriel dies. And we drew a Dread Presence, which is brilliant when you have a swamp in your hand. And I'm glad our hand isn't just full of discard effects, because this is when it doesn't work too well, when all the opponent has is a commander in the command zone. We get to play our Reezug here and hold open Infernal Grasp. So we can attack with the birds and the beetle. At the end of the day, if the beetle dies, we get to cast it from our graveyard for more value later. Whether the opponent knows that or doesn't know that, they don't block anyway, so that is cool. So I would give up the Raven Man here if I needed to, as it is a not really doing much when the opponent doesn't have any cards to discard. They sacrifice a food. So I'm not really sure. I haven't seen this particular build of Joda deck. I would expect a lot more legendary creatures. And if they're already sacrificing foods now, that's got to mean that we're in a good position. So we draw a swamp. I guess we could have held that and played the Dread Presence and then a swamp. But I want to get this Yawgmoth down. We can start removing their creatures if we feel threatened by them. But right now, I don't feel threatened at all by the opponent. What I can see on board. I do know that with Joda on the battlefield and legendary spell, we could be in serious trouble. So always keeping this Infernal Grasp for that eventuality. Our Beetle's going to die here, so we may as well sacrifice it.
We could sacrifice another creature to put another -1 counter on Azusa, but I'm not too concerned right now. Let's try and get the damage through whilst we can. Opponent takes 4 down to 20. We draw a Faceless Haven, and given we've got 4 snow lands, that's a nice card to draw at this particular juncture. Okay, so they use their Goose to make another food, and attach the Shadow Spear to the Azusa. So it's now 1/2 with the lifelink. But yeah, they've now got 2 cards in their hands, so we get to return the Virus Beetle. Or we get to play our Dread Presence. But I think I go for the Virus Beetle here, as we want to play the Presence when we got a Swamp in our hand. Opponent has to discard. We're going to get another bird from the Raven. They discard a Coma, so that's a card I'm glad is not on the battlefield. So yeah, they're probably a bit mana screwed as well, but we have managed to reduce the size of their hand as we explore and find a Village Rites. Get to attack the opponent with our Yawgmoth and 2 birds. We're slowly getting there. The Raven Man's been a good all-star in this particular game. Opponent with Chromatic Lantern. So they've now got the mana that's needed to cast Jodah next turn. They equip Shadow Spear to the Goose. But I mean, we've got Infernal Grasp, Heartless Act. Pretty confident with where we are right now. I don't really want to be sacrificing too many creatures with Yawgmoth, as I want to actually kill the opponent. But we can use our Village Rites here just to draw a couple of cards. More removal with our Chupacabra. And even more removal with a Soul Shatter. So I tried to not put too much removal in this deck. However, when you're playing mono black, you tend to end up having quite a bit. So we get to ramp with our Signet. Just discard that last card in their hand using the Raven Man. And I'm glad I did, because it's a farewell. So yeah, Raven Man's been absolutely phenomenal in this particular game. Attack with Yawgmoth, 2 birds again. I mean, if I was the opponent here, I'd be pretty annoyed. Especially as they that farewell would have absolutely got them back into this game. There's the land that they would have needed to cast it, and Jodah. So had we not had all this removal on our hand, we would be facing down a big problem this next turn, and there's even more removal with our Noxious Gearhulk. We're going to gain 7 life if we cast that here, as we are clearly going to target Jodah. Yeah, so this has been a pretty resounding game for us. But they're not dead yet, they're on 13. We are on 29, but yeah, we still got to kill them. But opponent scoops it up